Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. You're very welcome to our preview show, and we're looking forward to the club games coming up this Friday evening. It's great to be back after the summer holidays, and as I said, we've loads of the games coming up on Friday. So we'll go through whatever we can here, as obviously we can't go through them all. But I'm joined by Peter Nugent, and he's going to assist me in looking at the games that are upcoming. So we'll start in Division 1A, and we'll have a lot of points on offer here. All teams are in action on Friday evening. All games at 8 o'clock as well. But we'll start with the Harps and Grange, Peter. This is a big game for both teams. Obviously, we've spoken about Grange a couple of times this year that they're going to start needing points there in the relegation zone at the minute themselves in Mahari. But the Harps as well, I think Harps, Modden and Cross are all on 13 points. Clevie are on 17, but Clevie have a game extra than the Harps. So I think the Harps are probably the best team equipped to challenging Clevie for the league title. So you can be sure that the Harps will want 2 points on Friday evening.
Yeah, Sean, I'm sure they will. I suppose you got to keep in mind too that the championships probably just sort of starting to simmer around the corner now as well, and a lot of the teams in 1A, if they feel like they've sort of staved off relegation, 1A typically, it's not really about, for a lot of them teams, it's not about coming and actually win the league. Maybe more so for the likes of maybe Clevie or even Modden. Maybe Clevie in the instance of, they've been knocking around for a while and they really want to start putting scores in the doors, or Modden who have just come up, and really need to get the wins under their belt to breathe the sort of self-belief that they belonged up there. But for the likes of Harps, I suppose, who've been knocking around there traditionally, having a good season for them there is just probably, doing enough to stay in the division. They've got 13 points, handful of games left. They're 4 points behind. I suppose a win would put them in good stead and would keep the pressure on the top. But I think at this stage now, you've a lot of teams 1A in the championship and probably trying to make sure the players are in the best possible shape and maybe getting men back from knocks and things. So whilst it's an important game, it always is between them two, because there's obviously that derby parochial element to it as well. I think with the 4 point gap, the Harps will be happy to win it, but I still think at the same time, if they don't win, they've probably got their eyes fixed on bigger days down the road.
And really, on that point you're making, Peter, that the teams are all about staying up. Obviously, they're in the top tier; they want to stay there. Grange and Mahari as well, who take on Modden on Friday. Both them teams, that's the bottom two. Grange, I think, are on 7 points and Mahari below on 4. So they're the two teams that are going to be fighting for their lives now in the next couple of weeks. So two massive points in offer for both teams on Friday evening.
100%. And, I suppose for both of those teams, like Grange had sort of flirted in between 1A and 1B for a few seasons, but they had a good league campaign last year. Through the COVID period, 2020 and 21, and then obviously Mahari have been Division 1A sort of standard bearers nearly now for probably since its inception, really, and they won the league as well, I think, in 2020. So in that case, it will be a blow. It'll be disappointing for whichever of those teams, or if they both end up going down, it'll be disappointing. Because really, when you're pitting your wits every week, against the Harps and Cross Midland, and teams that ilk, it's the perfect type of preparation, really. And a lot of them teams, as I alluded to in the point before, it's just about really staying in the division. And Mahari now, with a few county men back, Ian will be back. It may galvanise them to maybe go on a bit of a run. But they've left themselves with a bit of work to do. And they're probably now in the position of having to win all their remaining games, and form like that can be hard to come by, especially sort of this late in the year. So you would say that it's going to be difficult for Mahari probably on this occasion to get themselves completely out of it. And Grange, their form's been patchy all year. They've had a couple of notable results. I think especially in their derby games, they've managed to pick up points. But overall, I think the threshold for staying up there is probably going to be somewhere in the region of maybe 11, 12 points maybe. So both sides have a fair bit to do.
And I think usually when we talk about Modern and Mahari, I always think of the middle of the field that they're lined with big men, but obviously now Grimley's going to be missing for the remainder of the year, it looks like, and we'll probably talk about how big of a blow that is come the championship. And Ben Creeley, obviously in America as well, he's a big miss for Mahari, but the clubs that there's a lot of teams hit now with boys jetting off, and no question about it, they're just right after a couple of years of COVID and everything, but he's going to be a big loss for Mahari. Cross obviously have Rian O'Neill away, Cian McConville away, Clonard have been hit with Turbo and McCambridge away. So there's teams that have their county men back, are unlucky to do so, and some of them they've got some of their county men back.
Yeah, well, let's look at the draw that way, Sean, isn't it? I suppose you're speaking to any management teams and coaches. They'll say, well, this is why we work with a panel, all year through. And that's when some of your more regular first choice players don't be available at times through the year. When you've had a sort of a healthy panel assembled through the year, and you're getting to develop and work with players, then this is really the ideal opportunity then for those players who maybe just sort of been around the periphery. It's their chance then to step in and stake their claim, really. So whilst it's disappointing, I suppose, not to have your better players or your more established players available, it always is a case of opportunity knocks as well for those squad players. And for lads in that window of, say, between 19 and 22, maybe that's just that run of games that they're crying out for to really establish themselves. So there's pros and cons to it, I suppose, both ways.
And we'll go down to Division 1B then. On talking about county men coming back, we've said on the podcast numerous times that Cullyhanna were obviously struggling without their three county men. They're three of the best players in the county, obviously top 20 players in the county. Is Aidan Nugent, Jason Duffy and Ross McQuillan. They've got them back now. They're sitting in a relegation position in Division 1B. They're taking on Sarsfields on Friday night. This is a big game for Cullyhanna. Every game from here on in is going to be big games for them, but having that injection of them three players, there's been a few men back. I know Mickey Murray's back playing. I think Tony Donnelly's back from America. So this could be a massive couple of weeks for Cullyhanna.
Yeah, it is, Sean. It's looking like a shootout really between Cullyhanna and Grange for that last spot. With three going down, and I suppose Cullyhanna, the thing that maybe has been to their detriment over the last couple of years has been probably inconsistency in team selection. I've seen them on numerous occasions, probably over the last couple of years, and I would say that's probably the main factor has been I've seen so many different players probably lined out for them over the last couple of years, and some days have been good, and some days they haven't been that good. Getting them players back, aside from the county men, getting the other two lads back who would have notable experience of playing at the top level in Armagh, will only be a benefit to them. But there is a gap there at the minute between them and Grange, and although they do have the games in hand, you still have to win them. And 1B is very competitive. And playing Sarsfields, although they're at home, they did manage to get a good result down in Sarsfields a number of weeks ago. I think they came from behind that day. I think Sarsfields were well in the clear, and sort of maybe whether they took their foot off the gas or Cullyhanna really rallied. And it's going to be interesting. It's a really tough game to call. The last day, Sarsfields were missing maybe 6-7 regulars out of their team, and at times Grange were 6-7 points ahead in the game, but Sarsfields retain that belief that they have, especially playing at home, that they'll continue to go and plug away and keep taking the scores over, and in the end up they'll probably consider themselves unfortunate enough not to get all 2 points out of the game. But on the other hand, when we look at how significant that result was, that was a result that didn't go Cullyhanna's way. Grange getting a point there is another point on the board, another game down, and it really kept the pressure paid on Cullyhanna. So, they're a proud senior club, and now they're staring down the barrel of going back to intermediate. And I think maybe they won intermediate in 2008, 2007, maybe around that time. So they've been in senior ever since, and they've been a strong senior club for a long period of that. So I'm sure that a lot of the narrative there this week will be that they certainly don't want to be dropping the intermediate, and they're going to want to make a real fist of this.
And I think that this game, you mentioned the game that Sarsfield and Cullyhanna played a couple of weeks ago. It ended 3-12 till 2-15. It was a draw. Like, this has the potential to be a shootout. And we know Sarsfield, you mentioned that Grange game was 4-12 to 4-12. They love a shootout, and Cullyhanna has the forwards to match that. So this could be a game of the week.
Absolutely. I mean, it has the potential, yeah. I suppose from a Sarsfield's perspective there, you'd just be a wee bit wary that the same sort of old habits are coming back to bite them a wee bit, that they put themselves in a good position. I suppose in the early going in the league to make a real stab of it. I don't think they were hardly beat at all in the first sort of 7 or 8 games. Since then, they've tripped up at home in 2 games that they would have seen as being pretty winnable in Cullyhanna and Grange, which has sort of stunted their promotion charge a wee bit. And in both games, they conceded, pretty high tallies, which would traditionally be their sort of Achilles heel. So I suppose you'd be looking out this weekend to see can they, sort of stiffen things up a wee bit at the back and put the clampers on Cullyhanna's forwards. And if they can do that, then we know that with Ian up front and Thomas McAlinton sort of supplementing him and maybe Paul Young back as well, and a couple of the Stevensons, they'll be able to really pay the scores on the other end.
Another game we're going to look at then is Ballymacnab and the Grange, and we've sort of spoke about the Grange there, that they're just not out of the woods yet. They're a team that are missing a few key men. We talked about boys going to America. Justin Kearns is obviously in America. I think Cahill McKenna is injured at the minute. They're missing a few key men, but obviously Ethan Rafferty back is a huge boost. Scored 2 goals against Sarsfields the last day out. And obviously Grange, which we've spoke about it with Cullyhanna, they're going to need points as well. So going to Ballymacnab, it's a tough game for the Grange and it's a tough ask. Obviously Ballymacnab are still unbeaten on their top of the league.
Look, Sean, I think in 1B, for any of the teams going to yourselves is really the acid test. It's Ballymacnab are in 1B, but they've been a 1A team for a long time, and they've had a really strong recent championship record over the last 10 years as well, where they're always competing at the business end of the table. So it looks like the Nab are going to go back up, and it'll be a case of who joins them. So this is going to be a tough game for the Grange, but I think interestingly, Grange finish out the campaign with, I think it's 4 home games, maybe 3-4 home games in a row. This is their last away game. So I don't want to say it's a shot to nothing, but they'll be buoyed by recent results, by the one in Pearsogue and the late score to win it, and then getting the result in Trasna as well will have helped the confidence, and the fact that the attack wise they played really well on the night, kicked a lot of scores. It looked like they were going to score a goal every time they went forward in the first half, and there seems to be a good bit of confidence running through the forward line, and those boys up front are as good as there is anything anywhere in the county. And I know it gets said a lot of the time, but trust me when I say they are. They're with without Justin at the minute, the other boys are still more than capable. And Ethan came back and scored 2 goals. And the last day playing from midfield. So the threats are live and they're coming from all angles. So it's probably a game where the Nab are going to be favourites, and rightly so. But if they don't approach it with the respect that is due, then Grange will be right in it. And once the thing about Grange is, they're not afraid to keep pushing. Once they get their noses in front, they'll keep pushing. It's only really way they know how.
I think the Grange, the forward line from the Sarsfields game, their rotation is interesting. Like Ethan, he played midfield, he played most of the time at midfield, but he does drift in. They always have a target man or somebody to hit in that full forward line, whether it be Ethan Rafferty, Owen Rafferty, Brennan Rafferty, maybe at times. They always have somebody in there, and they have good rotation, as you say. They have a forward line that can really match anything in the county, and for any defence, it's going to be a handful.
Yeah, well, Owen played lined out of midfield, but probably played, you say, maybe half the game in it full forward, and with his presence and how good he is under a high ball, he's a real threat as well, and he's also a superb kicker of the ball as well from from 50 yards for scores, but from deeper he can link the play from back to front by moving the ball off the boot with real accuracy. And that's probably what I've seen this year is maybe the Grange are the best team in that division at moving the ball back to front off the boot. Seeing them against Carcruppen, and they were well depleted that day, but they just knew how to move it and get their main players on the ball, and they moved it from back to front really well off the boot. And it was nearly like 2-3 kick pass football, whereas you see a lot of the other teams are very possession based and needing to recycle the ball and go through the phases. Whereas if you push up on Grange and try and go after them, if they get that first kick pass off out of defence, then you're in real bother. So looking forward to that game at the weekend. I think that there could be a really cracking game, but of course you have to respect that the Nab have their own strengths and they're very well versed and well coached, and have strengths throughout the team. Interestingly enough, in the first game in Grange is probably one that Grange might feel that they sort of let slip. The 3-point lead at half time. I think the Nab wiped it out shortly after half time, but the second half was really nip and tuck. And that wee bit extra experience, and Gail probably just about got the Nab over the line that night. But it's set up to be a good game, and you would fancy the Nab maybe just to get it done, but definitely not without a fight.
And we'll move down to Division 2A then. Peter, there's only one game in Division 2A. It's Tullysarn and Shane O'Neill's. Shane O'Neill's top of the league at the minute, favourites to not only gain promotion, but to probably win the league the way the league's looking at the minute. But this is a massive game for that. Shane O'Neill's aren't guaranteed top spot, but the fight that's going to be there for second spot is unbelievable. Tullysarn, St Peter's and St Paul's are all well in this battle. But if Tullysarn lose on Friday night, do you feel that that's going to be a hammer blow? If Shane's win, you'd imagine Shane's are going to push on and win the league, and if Tullysarn lose that, it's a long way back to try to get that second place.
It is, Sean. Yeah, I think Tullysarn will then, if they don't win on Friday night, by losing the points, they then don't have the head-to-head on either St Peter's or Shane O'Neill's. And the first game was a draw between them two teams up in Camla, so they would be effectively out of the race. I think it's sort of winner bust for their league aspirations. Two very slick teams. I think they're probably the two slickest teams in the division. We've had up close encounters with them both recently, and I'll have to say that both impressed me. Tullysarn gave us a real lesson 5 or 6 weeks ago and shot the lights out. And they're a dangerous team when you have to go after them and when you want to commit high on them. Forwards at the other end of the field, and if they're feeling it, they just keep punishing you and keep putting the ball over the bar. So it's a real conundrum how to set up against them. Shane O'Neill's very impressed with them 3 or 4 weeks ago. They manipulated the ball really well, have a really strong running game. No real outright players looking to steal all of the limelight. Very team centered. They had a wee wobble 3 or 4 or probably 5 or 6 games into the campaign when they lost at Ballymacnab, and then they were beat by St Paul's after having a huge lead and sort of wiped out in the last 10 minutes, and you're sort of thinking, well, that has potential to destabilise them, but they've rallied again, and obviously they've got 2 other county players back now as well, and they're on a roll again. So you would probably think that they're travelling to Tullysarn. There's a lot on the line, but I think if they can manage to nip this one on Friday night, they've probably got one hand on the trophy and also 1 foot in Division 1 for next year.
And Division 2B then, Peter, the main conversations at the top of the table as well. You have Blake taking on Tiernogue now on Friday night. This is a massive game. Obviously, Tiernogue, Cullaville and Blake are all on 18 points at the top of the table. This is the first time Blake and Tiernogue have played this year, but they're going to have to play again. I think it's in about 4 weeks' time. And having given that Blake have already beaten Cullaville, if they were to beat Tiernogue now, they would have a win each over the 2 top contenders. So you'd imagine Blake are going to push on and win the league. But Tiernogue, obviously, if they can upset it if they can beat Balik. It's just a massive 2 points that could go a long way in deciding who's going to win the league.
It is. I mean, you have to respect how Balik have took into this campaign. I've seen them against Cullaville when they won up in Cullaville, and that's traditionally a difficult place to go and win. And they really took into Cullaville that night and got in front quite early in the game, and were able to hold Cullaville off really then for the rest of the game. And probably would have a lot of players that would have been under the radar because they've been playing junior, I suppose, as that team's been building. But when you see them up in the flash, you realise that they're well conditioned side, and they're playing very hard for each other, and that wee bit of stardust staying up front and supplemented by McParlin and O'Neill playing in the middle of the field, who are probably as good in midfield as there is about at intermediate level. So, but in saying that, Portadown have really been on a rebuild job this year. I know they've been flushing in a lot of youth into their team, and probably at the outset there were maybe after the first 3 or 4 games that have been probably seen as the outright favourites to go up and win the league, but Cullaville and Balik have really stayed with them, and now we're going to get a really good climax in this division where those teams are all going to have to sort of face off now. Home advantage for Portadown Balik have home advantage.
It's in Balik, yeah, it's in Balik.
Balik have home advantage. That's really huge on a Friday night. Portadown having to travel in the South Armagh, that's going to be a real test of character.
I think it's worth mentioning Balik are still unbeaten, and if my memory's right, there's only 3 teams. I think Ballymacnab, Balik and Derrynoose are the only 3 in the whole county that are unbeaten. So when you're travelling to Balik, a team that's unbeaten, they're not going to be beating their home patch.
Well, that's it. And I seen even that night, they're not blessed with huge panel or huge numbers, but clearly there's a lot going right there. Seem to be really well organised, a very good, clear idea of how they're meant to defend and attack, and clearly with their smaller numbers, and that also leads to a real camaraderie and that sort of feeling of it being a tight unit. So Portadown definitely have their work cut out, but they're coming down with good players themselves. Paul Carville's still there up front, making things happen. And they're strong in the middle of the field. Jordan McHugh's still there. They've good experience still through the team, with McCormick there as well, who's been a really good player at intermediate level now for a long time, but been flushing in some of the younger players like Connody's in now as well, and they're really making a difference. So it's going to be interesting. You would just think with Balik having the unbeaten record that potentially they could be set to extend that, but it wouldn't surprise if that one even finished up all square.
And now we'll go down to junior. There's obviously been a split in the junior. The big one, I suppose, is Middletown on St Michael's on Friday night in Division 3A. Derrynoose, as we've said in the other divisions, Derrynoose, they haven't won the league yet, and Derrynoose would, I'm sure, remind me of that if I was to suggest that. But it seems like there's going to be a second place up for grabs. There's a couple of teams nipping at Dynoose's heels, but Middletown and St Michael's would be the 2 favourites to fight it out for that second place. So another massive game here on Friday night, and the winner who can come through this, you'd more or less expect to get that second place.
Yeah, it's interesting enough, Sean, that a couple of seasons ago, you would have thought that Newtown were sort of at rock bottom, and really think they were maybe competing in 3B for a couple of seasons, and it was hard to see really where things were going to start to improve for them. But obviously going by league results this year, they've put a run together, and they seem to be rebuilding again. And traditionally a strong club, a strong intermediate level club, and it's not that long ago that they were actually competing at senior level. So they sort of dropped quick, but there's obviously a bit of a rebuild going on there now, and I think that they sort of got a lot more youth into their team. So it's going to be a bit of a dogfight, but it's good to see them. It's good to see them coming back on the way back, because they are one of the traditional clubs, and they've always sort of made the most of what they had. So to see them coming back now is a good sign for football in that area.
I think you mentioned they were in Division 3B a couple of times. I think last year, and I should have double checked this before we come on, I think they won Division 3B last
Yeah.
year. So it has pushed them on. And just on Division 3B, it's now, well, the split in the league. It's a class opportunity for a team like Thomas Davis, I think, are top of the Division 3B now. For a team like that to win a trophy before the championship starts, and as we've seen with Newtown, then hopefully push on from that.
There's success breeds success, Sean. You know, when like for any of the teams that are in 3B, they'll respect the position they're in. They'll know that there's probably no real quick fix, and that it's just going to be hard work, staying committed to the club. You know, winning the games that are there to be won, and putting the foundations in place and moving on, and bringing the confidence with you. And in the case of Newtown, obviously winning it last year has propelled them on to have a much more successful season this year. So that's like if you look at it, for example, you have Portmore who are down there, who, you know, were in intermediate football probably this last 4 or 5 seasons, and made the drop. But they've made the drop, and I know they've lost a couple of players, and it just goes to show you can make the drop, and you're not automatically guaranteed just to be in around the top 2 to 3 if you can't retain the player selection and can't keep your best players, you know, at the club or in, I suppose, interested, or if they decide to move on, then it can be difficult for anyone. So it's shaping up. It's probably going to be very competitive there, yeah.
So that's all we'll have for you today, folks. We'll be back on Saturday. We'll have our match reports from all the games on Friday night. On Monday or Tuesday, we'll be back with our review show, and we'll be building up to the following weekend. Then there's loads of games coming thick and fast. Just before we finish up, best of luck to Armagh Camogues. They're in the All-Ireland semi-final this weekend, and they're playing Cavan on Saturday in Tullamore. So best of luck to them, and hopefully they can get over the line. Peter, great to have you on, and great to hear your thoughts. And we'll hopefully hear from you again in a couple of weeks' time.
Thanks, Sean.